The state of Australia right now is, even though we've had a lot of great Christian foundation, we're not just a penal colony, we do have some great Christian foundation in our history. Right now, the church is not strong. The church has not been influential in any of the most recent referendums, including the gay marriage referendum. All the people who signed petitions and prayed and voted according to your conscience, according to your belief, you would have been disappointed by the outcome. And we have called a special meeting because we are now facing another referendum. And this one is now shrouded in mystery, mysterious language. We're going to vote about the voice. And I watched a social media interview of Aborigines. Say, has anyone consulted you about the voice? They said, what's the voice? Who's representing us? Well, the voice is supposed to represent you. Who's the voice? No idea. So a lot is going on in Australia and in Western democracies that are no longer being controlled by the people. Meaning it's not voted on by us. It's not requested by us. And we are not allowed to even question or oppose it. Or we get labeled and penalized and get bank accounts frozen. This is not ordinary democracy. It doesn't take a conspiracy theorist to realize we've been lied to for many years. So the state of Australia right now, I have to tell the world, the ACT government, that's like our Washington, D.C., has just confiscated a Christian hospital, a Catholic hospital, because it won't perform abortions. This has got to be one of the most flagrant violations of property right known in the history of Western democracy, if we can even call it that. And the ACT, there's all sorts of arguments about, well, the ACT owns all the lands over there. They're kind of like a little royal pocket of Australia. So that hospital doesn't own the land. Yeah, but the hospital has like a 100-year lease. And when there weren't good hospitals, the government begged for the Catholics to form a hospital and gave them the lease. And now, because of political expediency, because now ideologies have changed, their rights aren't protected. And they're not compensated. One of the rules of confiscating, there is like legal confiscation of your property, like when they want to build a highway. Well, if they confiscate in Australia, if they take your land, the rule is they have to pay you above market value. That's a pretty good rule, right? I didn't choose to have a highway come through my backyard, so if you're going to confiscate my land, you need to pay me above value. They did not pay this Catholic hospital. This has just happened. Now we've got the WA government, the Western Australia government, proposing legislation to protect Aboriginal land. I mean, Aboriginal land is where? Is it the entire continent of Australia? Is it certain pockets? What is it? Well, they're trying to confiscate farmland by stealth in the name of Aboriginal rights. And we've already seen this playbook. We see it happening in the Netherlands. We see the farmers have finally basically voted out the government. The government there has collapsed because the farmers would not take it. Now, Europe has a longer history than us. How many of you have lived in Europe? I've lived in Europe. Okay, we have a German. Where did you live? Italy. All right, Italy, Germany. I lived in France, Spain, England. And Europe has a long history of protests. They've been through many, many cycles of dictatorships. So I don't know that we have that here. I mean, in fact, I know we don't have that here. We have a little bit of, during COVID, a little bit of protest. And it did not make a difference, did not change the laws. So what will we do when they start confiscating our land, which they have already begun? I'm just asking Christians, do you believe in property rights? I mean, it's one of the 10 commandments. Thou shalt not steal. The government has broken one of the essential core tenets of Christianity, of Judeo-Christian civilization. Thou hast stolen an entire hospital, and they're coming after the farms. Now the Albanese government, led by a man that no one would recognize on world stage, a name that hardly any one of us knew. It was like as if he was selected. How did this man become the number one Australian politician? I wouldn't recognize him in a Gloria Jeans. I wouldn't. I wouldn't recognize him in a Myers store. And he is now leading Australia and introducing a new bill. Listen to this Orwellian name, the Communications Legislation Amendment, combating misinformation and disinformation. So is that combating himself and his own 3 years of misinformation? This is now being exposed that one of the ways that they misinformed us about COVID deaths, this is fact now, is they said anyone who died within 3 weeks of taking the jab was considered unvaccinated. So remember when they blamed you and they said, oh, you're putting all the rest of us at risk if you're unvaccinated. You're so selfish. You didn't think about other Australians. Jesus said we have to be wise as serpents and gentle as doves. That is now like in full effect. This command is now in full effect. You've got to be wise, and yet you've got to be gentle. And you've got to mix those two. You know what's going on, but you can't blurt out everything. And not everybody can handle everything. Not everybody can handle the truth. So, on top of confiscating hospital lands, they are now trying to restrict our speech. And George Christensen, who was a great former MP, wrote, "Free speech is under attack in Australia. This bill threatens free speech by granting the government unprecedented power over what we say online, forcing content to be removed if they deem it as misinformation or disinformation." Now, this is happening while in America, Biden has already lost the argument. A federal court has said that the federal government has no right to contact your social media company to censor your social media account. So we are standing in contrast with what's going on in America, and this is why I often focus on America and say we have to make sure America doesn't go down the tube. Because it is the last bastion of freedom, and if it can be saved, it usually exerts its influence over the other English-speaking countries. So that's very, very helpful. Like, we're not going to really stand up against China on our own. But if America says, we don't like your Belt and Road Initiative, selling our land and our treasure to the Chinese, which is exactly what America did. You realize that, right? This was all planned. We were going to sell our transportation to the Chinese, and Mike Pompeo came for one visit. And Dan Andrews was just shut down. That's the power of America. So that's why we pray for her. All right, so this bill has far-reaching consequences for freedom of speech with its vague definitions of misinformation and disinformation, leaving interpretation open to abuse by those in power. Okay, well, that's just an obvious overreach and, very Orwellian. Very Orwellian what's happening.
Time University is a comprehensive online school. This will prepare you for the last days in the shortest amount of time. Over the course of this year-long program, you will gain the necessary tools and skills for what the Bible promises will come in the book of Revelation. ETU has a world-renowned faculty that have joined together to instill their many decades of Bible knowledge into this concise course. Visit ENCYCLOPEDIA.online to find out more about this amazing course.